Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Bava Metzia, Samachtas Bava Metzia 69. We're going to start on the bottom of 68b, 5 lines from the bottom. The Gemara is discussing an Iska partnership where the investor, we'll call him the money, gives money to the managing partner, and they agree to split half the profits, and they also agree to split half of the losses. But the problem is, if they lose money, then since they're splitting the losses and this person was working, the managing partner was working, he's not getting paid for his work. So then it's going to be considered like he's borrowing the money on interest. So he has to get paid. How much does he have to get paid? It's a machokes, whether he has to get paid the full value or just a nominal amount. So the Gemara says now a story of Rav Ilish. We remember Rav Ilish when we're in Gittin Memhem Abayz that he was one of the people, the only one in the Gemara who was able to speak with animals. He could speak with birds. So the Gemara says that Bnei Rav Ilish Nafak Alaya Hushtar, that after Rav Ilish died, there was a contract that was produced, and it was written in it that he gets half of the gains and half of the losses. But it didn't say anything about him getting a salary, and so therefore it looks like it was interest. So Amar Rava, when they were brought him this contract, said, Rav Ilish Gava Rabbahu. Rav Ilish was a great man. He never would have caused other people to do a prohibition. So therefore we have to look at it like this. If he was really receiving half of the gains, then trade tilte behefsid. Then he's only going to trade tilte behefsid. If he's receiving half of the gains, then we're going to have to say that the person who has the money, the investor, is going to have to assume 2/3 of the losses. And that extra part where he goes up from a half to a third, that's going to be considered the salary of Rav Ilish. But he palga b'hafsid, and if Rav Ilish agreed to half of the losses, then trei tol ba'agar. Then Rav Ilish is going to get 2/3 of the gain instead of 1/2, and so that extra amount that he gets, that's the salary. Amar Rav Kahana. So when Rava said this, Rav Kahana said this teaching in front of Rav Zvid. Amar Rav Kahana, Amrito Lashmaite Kamed Rav Zvid. Rav Kahana said, I said this teaching in front of Rav Zvid of Nardai, but Amar Wei, and he said to me, but how do you know this? Dilma Rav Ilish Tovo Imo B'tzir. Maybe Rav Ilish went with the money guy, with the investor, and he dipped his lunch with him, and so that's considered to be a nominal fee, and that would be sufficient. So therefore, why are you going to give him 2/3 of the profits? Maybe he already got paid. Remember Rav Nachman, Rabbi Yehuda, and the law is like Rabbi Yehuda, who said that that's sufficient. Amrway, Lav Hilchasa Idmar, Elashita Idmar. So he said no. When Rav Nachman said the law is like Rabbi Yehuda, he didn't say that. He just said Shita Idmar, that Rabbi Yehuda said the same position as Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda and Shimon Gamliel. Rabbi Yehuda said that if you just do a nominal dipping, it's okay. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda's position was that you could even pay them the managing partner with the whey or the shreds of the wool, and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said you could even pay him with the manure of the animals. And so they're all saying the same position, that a nominal fee is all that's required. And indeed, this is indeed logical because if you're not going to say this, we should have just said the law is like Rabbi Yehuda because he's the most lenient, and you wouldn't even have to say the law is like Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda or the law is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel because it's an obvious. If the law is like Rabbi Yehuda, for sure, if you pay them with the whey or with the manure, for sure that's going to be sufficient. So now, since Rav Ilish was what they were speculating that he said that maybe his salary was the extra, instead of getting half, he's getting 2/3. So now we have a similar type of scenario. Amarav Moser Shlish Bischarcha Harezem Mutter. He says, okay, after 1/3, the first 1/3 we split the profits. But after 1/3, you're going to get that as your salary. That's permitted. And that deals with the problem of otherwise he'd be working for you and not getting paid, and that's interest. Ushmul Amar, Lo Matzer Moses Shlish. But Shmuel says, but we have a problem with that. And this would have been a problem with Rav Ilish's approach also. Because let's say you don't make a profit that's more than 1/3. I mean, I understand you're very optimistic about this business thing, but let's say it ends up that you don't make the 1/3. Then this guy ended up working for 3. Don't go home empty-handed. He's not getting paid, and then therefore the loan turns into interest. Elamar Shmuel quotes it's dinar. Shmuel says you have to give a nominal fee, like Rabbi Yehuda said, but this time Rabbi Shmuel's position is just give him a dinar. So Gemara says, "V'sava Rav ain't quoted single dinar." Does Rav really say you don't have to pay him a dinar? Rama Rav reish egla lefatuma. Didn't Rav say that you have to give him the head of a calf as basically to appease the managing partner as a salary? This is we had a couple of days ago with Fatume Mili that you appease him with words. So with Fatuma, you have to pay the worker with the head of a calf, meaning to say you have to give him something. My love, aren't we talking about a case where he said anything more than 1/3 you get to keep, and now he's going to pay him on top of that with the head of a calf. And so we see from here that Rav says that you do have to do a dinar. Gemara says no. Then we gave him the option. He says I can either give you a head of a calf as your payment, or anything above 1/3 you get to keep. You get the choice. Alternatively, you're going to Islay Behema Ladidei, the Amri Inchi, Gvil Asora, Gvil Asore. So maybe the case where Rav said the extra 1/3 you get to keep is permitted. That's where he says this animal, where the guy who's the managing partner already has his own animal there. As people say, you feed one animal, you feed another animal. It's not adding any extra work. It's like if you're in a home and you're already watching 4 kids and then somebody drops off another kid, what's the big deal? It doesn't add anything extra. Rabbi Lazar may have grown ya, and so therefore you wouldn't have to pay anything to the managing partner. Rabbi Lazar may have grown ya zabim behema. So Rabbi Lazar may have grown ya. So what he did was he acquired an animal, and he gave it to a sharecropper. Basically, he gave it to a guy who became the managing partner. And so therefore they were going to split the profits and split the losses. And he gave him the head of the animal as his payment. So he says, okay, you have a salary. And he gave him half of the profits. His wife, the wife of the sharecropper of the Aris, said to him, well, if you had been his true partner, he would also have given you the tail. So the Nebuch guy started taking business advice from his wife, which would turn out to be a huge mistake, because Azal Zabin Ba'adei, so he went and he bought half of it. So the next animal. So he basically went and he bought another animal, and this time he bought it in partnership with Rebbe Lezer Gronya. So this time Paul Maui, so he gave him half the tail. So I'm like, okay, so the guy, the sharecropper, says now to Rebbe Lezer Gronya, so Nafagel Rachel, okay, give me half the head also. I'm like, no, I'm not giving you half the head. Ashtikmi Karanamilo. He said, sorry, I'm not going to give you half the tail. He says, because now that I'm a partner with you and not just a sharecropper, it's not enough that I get just half the tail, but I really should get the head, the whole head, because just like I got from the beginning. So basically, he came and he split the tail and head, and then he split the head and head. And so the sharecropper said, no, I should also get the whole head like I got before. So he says, no. Until now, it's all mine. I have no if I didn't give you a little bit more, it would look like interest. But now you're my partner. So now you're my partner, Anan. So now we're partners together. Micah Amrit, what are you going to say? Tarchanat Fei Porter, you're going to say you work harder than me? Oh, good. Every partner says that. Amri Inchi, Stama Rise, Lamare, Ara kamashabe. The people say a basic sharecropper. He's meshubah to the owner of the land. Kamashabe nafshe lasu leiraye. He's always looking harder to get the pasturing place. Meaning, say every partner claims he works harder. You're not going to get more just because you say you worked harder as a partner. Sorry, you lost the whole head because you became my partner. Kana Rabbanan, Hasham behemel chaver. So what they used to do was, like we discussed already, that they would give an animal to the investor would buy an animal, give it to the managing partner. The managing partner would raise it, and then they would split the profits and share in the losses. So Hasham behemel chaver on matay chayev otapabah. You can't just stop in the middle because you have this relationship. You can't just quit out of the business partnership in the middle. So how long do you have to work it? So Sumcha says Sumcha says by basically by these female donkeys, you need to work for it for 18 months. The Godros by these sheep, you have to work it for 24 months. And if he wants to divide up in the middle of his year, in the middle before the partnership's concluded, the investor can stop him, say, no, you have to complete the partnership, otherwise it's harder for me. You want to stop now, leave me with more work. And it states, so, but you can't say that the work for this year is work like next year. The Gemara says, well, that doesn't make any sense. What does that mean? We have to change the gear, so it means that he says, what does it mean when it says my kamar? What does this mean? Because you can't just stop in the middle of the first year because that was the easy part of the partnership. The harder part is raising the animal the second year. So we're not going to let the managing partner just back out after the first year. Tanya idach, a similar price. That if you give the animal over to your friend, so if the animal gave birth to the offspring, and the offspring wasn't part of the partnership, but he still has to watch it when it's initially born. So bedako amayom for a small animal for 30 days, begasa, but for like the cows for no yom for 50 days. Rabbi Yossi says bedako gimel chadashim. He says no, for the little sheep you have to watch it for 3 months. Because to deal with it it's much harder. But why is that harder? Because its teeth are very small. From that point on, from that point on, so now it's a new partnership. So he takes half of the from that point on, he takes half of the animal that he got. And also, it also takes from the offspring. He takes half of his friend, because this part is a new partnership, meaning to say so this part is a new partnership because now we have the fetus, the babies. They weren't part of the initial partnership. Hold on 1 second. She says, you then receive the Mekabel, the managing partner will receive half for his part, because half of it is his. And the second half of his friend, he'll take up half of the gains. Just like he takes in the mother half of the payment. And there's he doesn't get paid here. And even though he's responsible for the losses, because he has to work harder for his half, it's not alone. So the second part is not part of the initial loan. He has to work harder, so therefore he's going to take extra, but he doesn't get paid for it. So the Gemara says, Rav Menashe bar Gada shakel mechza shelo v'chatzi mechza b'shel chavero. He took his half and he took half of his friend's half. Also coming to Abai, so then he came to Abai. I'm like, man, Paulucha. Meaning to say that Rav Menashe bar Gada just wanted to stop the partnership in the middle. He said, "Who allowed you to stop it?" And furthermore, you can't just stop the partnership in the middle. Furthermore, Malcolm Shanago Agadohu, that this is a place where you have to, as part of your initial relationship, you would agree that you're going to raise the animal. You don't get to take the half, the offspring. It's not Malcolm Shanago Agado. Big deal. We learned in the Mishnah that a place where it's a practice to raise it, you have to raise it. So now we have a story. Hanu Trey Kutai. There were two people from the land of Kut. The Avod Iska Ba'ali. They did this partnership. Also, Chami Nayo Polik Zuzi B'Hodai Techaver. One of them went and dissolved the partnership without his friend's permission, but this partnership was cash, so he took his cash out. Also, Kami to Papa. So it came the guy the partner who was left with, abandoned by the first partner, came to Rav Papa. Rav Papa said to him, "What do you carry?" He took money. He didn't take a product that we have to evaluate. He just took his cash out. That's okay. He says Rav Nachman said that money, it's like it was already divided. You can take it whenever you want. Mashana, the next year, Zabun Chamra the two partners got together, and this time they brought wine. So come idach, so again, this time the guy who was abandoned the first time, this time he decided to divide up the partnership without permission without the knowledge of his friend. So now the guy who was abandoned was the first guy. Also coming to Rav Papa, he came back to Rav Papa. He said, "Man, Rav Papa goes to the guy who dissolved the partnership this time, and he said, "Who gave you permission to dissolve the partnership?" So now this guy who was left on the short end both times, he says to Rav Papa, "Kachazina de basar didika asimar." So I see that you have it in for me. The first time you ruled against me that he could divide the partnership without my permission. Now you ruled against me that I can't divide the partnership without his permission. It's not fair. So I'm Rav Papa. Says Rav Papa. Ki I gavna, or on top of some Samach and Beis. Rav Papa says, "Oh, like in this case, vade tzarcho duye. I for sure need to. I need to let him know about this. I need to tell him my reasoning. Zuze mi shakil, tave v'shavek chasrei. So money." When you take the money, did he take for himself money that was better than the other money? Meaning to say, no, all the money was the same. But when it comes to wine, there's better wine and there's worse wine. So you can't just dissolve the partnership. You have to go through procedures to make sure that one person is not taking the better wine. Rav Nachman said, if you have cash, it's like it was already divided. But hani mili tavi v'tavi. But that's where the cash is basically the same type of cash, that they're just basically the same type of coins. Meaning, say he took coins and he left coins, or tekue, or all of the coins were full weight. Aval tave v'tikue lo. But if they're two different types of coins, if part of them are lightweight, but they're let's say the images are still good, and the other part way more, but they don't have the good images, then you can't do it. Rav Chama have mugar zuze b'pshita. So Rav Chama had the idea that just like you can rent out, he thought that this was a way around interest. He said, just like you rent out your car, your shovel, your hoe, so too you could rent out your money. He says, I'm going to lend you my money, and you have to pay me for it. I'll rent you my money. You have to pay it for me. You have to pay me pshita biyoma. And he was for a coin. Rav Chama ended up losing his money because he was trying to do a workaround around the interest. He ended up losing his money. So who savar ma'ishna mimara? What was Rav Chama's reasoning? He said, well, how is this different from renting out a garden utensil? That's what he thought. He said, Ma'ishna Mimara, Veloi, it's totally different. Mara, Hadra Be'ena, Viyadia Pachte. No, this like garden hoe, you return it exactly, and you know the depreciation. Zuze Lo Hadra Be'ena. The coin, you don't return the exact coin, you switch it out. And Voyadia Pachate, and you don't know its depreciation. And so therefore, he's basically getting paid for borrowing money and for lending money, and that's a form of interest. Amarava Sharle interest a person can say to his friend, Halach Dalet Zuze, meaning say Reuben could say to Shimon, take my 4 zuz, and lend money to Levi. Meaning say Reuben can give money to Shimon so that Shimon lends money to Levi. So Reuben is paying the interest to Shimon on the loan that Shimon makes to Levi. Why? The Torah, when Torah prohibits interest, it only prohibits the interest from the borrower to the lender, and this isn't from the borrower to the lender, so therefore it's permitted. Excuse me. A person is allowed to say to his friend, he says a person is allowed to say to his friend, take 4 zuz and go tell this person to lend money. Meaning, say you're allowed to hire somebody to convince somebody else to lend money. He's not taking the interest; he's just getting paid for encouraging the other person to lend the money. Like the son of Rav Papa, Abba Marbre de Rav Papa. Now what do they do? Have a shakal unga de kira. He used to take these like wax balls, mikirai from a wax maker, and he would say to his father, "Uspinu zuze," and then he get paid in wax, and he tells his father, "Go lend him money." And so v'amrle Rabbanu Rav Papa achal brei demei demar Rabisa. He says your son is consuming interest. So Amaru, no, Kokia Rabisa, Necho, this type of ribis, this type of interest, lo asra Torah. The Torah didn't prohibit it. The only type of interest that's prohibited is ribis haba milova lamalva, the interest that comes directly from the borrower to the lender. But hachasar miraka shakel, my son is just taking money for. My son is just taking money for convincing me to lend the money, and that's permitted. Bishari, that's permitted. So now we have some of the concepts that we've had before already in the next Mishnah. Shamin para v'chamor v'chol davar shu osev ochal or Again, you're allowed to give over the cow and the donkey and anything that works, and you're allowed to do this relationship where the managing partner gets half of the profits and of the losses, you split half of the losses. Why? Because that this animal is working, and so his salary is that he gets the animal to work for him. Makom shenagu achokas avodos miyad cholkin. Now, what about the offspring? So you have to build that into the agreement. If it was a place where they divide up the animals immediately, the offspring, immediately you divide up. Makom shenagu agado, a place where it was the practice that they had to raise them. Then Yagdilu, he needs to raise him. That's the practice. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, Shaman Egel Imo Usiachem Imo. He says, you basically you assume that the calf is with the mother, and you don't need to pay the worker for watching the calf. That you don't need to give extra money. And then we say the last line is Mafriz, or Rashi says Mafrin. Rashi changes the word from the text from our Mishnah. Rashi is Mafrin al Sadeo. And what that means, you increase on the field. That's what Rashi says. Lashon Parav the Rabbi, you're increasing, and the Eno Choshesh Mishum Ribbis, and you don't have to be concerned that this is interest. Rashi says that the Dibur Malskal and Rashi has Mafrin, but then Rashi writes Linira. Seems to me that it's mafriz with a zayin, lashon marchiv u'magdil. You make it greater. Like, it gives a couple of examples. So then we go on. It says the Mishnah, Tana Rabbana mafriz al sadeu ve'eno choshesh mishum ribos. That you're allowed to increase on the field, and you don't have to be concerned that this is a form of interest. What are we talking about here? Let's say you rent the field from your friend, and you're willing to pay 10 kurim for the year for this field, 10 kurim of wheat for the year, 10 kurim chitul shana. Amarlo, and he says your friend, and he says to him, Teli matayim zuz v'farnasa, and then the person who is working the field, who rents it, says, give me 200 zuz, and I will make it better. Let me 200 zuz, and I'll put it into the field. I'll put it into manure, the harvesting, the sowing, the plowing. Give me money. I'll make the field better. And instead of me giving you 10 wheat bushels a year, I'll give you 12. Mutter. We're going to say that is not going to be considered interest, and that's permitted. And but rather, basically, he's renting from him a better field, and so therefore he's giving him more money. So that's why he's allowed to do it. But you can't do such a thing for a shop or a ship. On Amar of Nachman, Amar of Barvua, Pa'amim Shemafrez Achonos Latsur Batsura and Sfino Asospa Iskara. You can sometimes do this for a shop to make drawings in the shop, so people want to shop there. And a ship, you could use the money for a sale to make it a better ship, then it would be okay. Chanos Latsur Batsura. So what's the reason why I can do it for a store? The Tzavuba Anche, because people draw on it. V'hai Agra and then people want to rent it more. Sfino Sosla Iskaria, you make a sale on the ship, keeping the Shapira, because the reasoning is that keeping the Shapira Iskaria Tfei, because since the sale is better, Agra Tfei, he's going to make more money. Sfinasa, so now the Gemara gives us a law with respect to the sale of a ship and renting a ship. Can the person who rents the ship accept upon himself responsibility if it gets ruined? And if that's the case, then it's like a loan, and then he's like interest he's paying. So Sfinosa Amarav Agro Pagra, meaning to say he's allowed to take money for the rental, even though the renter accepts upon himself the responsibility that if it breaks, he has to pay him. And it's not interest. So Amalei Rav Kana Rav Asi, Iagra, Lo Pagra. Well, if he's paying, then the renter shouldn't accept the responsibility. If he accepts the responsibility, Lo Agra, then he shouldn't have to pay the rent. So, because isn't it a form of interest that if he is not paying, if he accepts the responsibility, he can't pay the money because that's interest. So Shosik Rav Amar Rav Sheshas my time Shosik Rav. Why is Rav quiet? Didn't he learn even though we learned that you're not allowed to take the sheep and the iron from a Jew, meaning to say that you're not allowed to do a type of partnership where the Jew accepts upon himself all the responsibility and he has to return the whole value, even if it will be diminished, and if it'll go up, he splits it because this is considered to be like interest. But you could do it from the non-Jew, this type of relationship. But if you say, I'm giving a cow to my friend, and the cow you're giving me, the cow is now worth 30 dinar, and I'm going to pay you. I'm going to rent it for you one seller per month. That's permitted because he's not responsible to return to the owner of the animal the entire value of what it's worth now. So the Gemara says, is it really the case that we can't do the evaluation? Means say you don't pay it while he's alive, but only after the death. And so it says that you can't do this by a ship. And these sailors, what their practice was, that they would pay the money when they took the ship, and pagra b'shas shvira, and they paid the damages when it broke. So the Gemara says, just because he did it, that's interest. Is it dependent upon practice? The Gemara says, yes. Mishum demasnisa tanya minhaga. So the Gemara says, it's not that it was permitted because it was a custom. It's just that the Brisa said that this was what they did. We're going to stop here, and God willing, pick this up. I will repeat it at 8 o'clock this morning. Shkoyach.